All right, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I see folks joining us from different parts of the world. Thank you for joining Eastern Academy of Management Learn and Share series. My name is Gulshan Javadian. I am the Vice President-elect of Eastern Academy of Management this year, and I have been hosting this Learn and Share series this year. Today, we have a session on teaching like an entrepreneur as a part of our series on entrepreneurial thinking in academia. We are very honored to have Dr. Laura Dorsey Elson with us today. I'm going to briefly introduce her, and then we are going to be all ears. Dr. Laura Dorsey Elson is the director of the Center for Innovation, Instruction, and Scholarship at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. She leads the university's commitment to faculty development in high-impact instructional practices and teaching and learning excellence. Laura has over 25 years of professional experience in higher education, both as a faculty member and as an administrator. She has a PhD in organizational communication, a master's in intercultural communication, and a certification in higher education teaching. In addition to her work in academia, Laura has extensive experience with faculty development and has delivered professional workshops around the globe in the areas of high impact teaching practices, leadership development, conflict management, strategic organizational communication, change management, training and development, group dynamics and behavior, and interpersonal interactions, all from a human communications perspective. The teaching and learning applications of artificial intelligence are Laura's latest faculty development pursuit, with interests ranging from practical teaching and learning applications and how to persuade faculty to try one thing, to identify productive communication and organizational change practices that institutions can use to navigate AI's usage on their campus. Everyone, please help me welcome Dr. Laura Dorsey Elson. We are all ears now.
Well, thank you very much, Gulshan. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. I would very much appreciate signs of life instantly by either turning on your camera if you're able, or I saw one colleague threw a thumbs up. Thank you, Mohammed. To know that you're there, or if your camera's on, to smile back, because this is not a huge group, but it is a group and you're a part of it. And see, isn't that, and someone actually used a heart emoji, which I very much appreciate. And I haven't even earned it, but it is nice to feel welcomed to your community and to be invited to speak with you. Thank you for turning on your camera if you can, because I'm going to ask you to unmute and share. There'll be space for you to do that. But of course, I completely respect and trust that you're doing what you can to be as present as you can when you can. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? So, as Gulshan said, I'm Laura Dorsey Elson. Hearing one's bio after being in working and being a professional for 30 years is always so interesting. I very much feel still like I'm beginning in some ways, even though everything she said, I certainly have been doing. So I appreciate it. And then Gulshan, congrats to you and thank you for the invitation. Just a quick technical question before we get started. This is for you, Gulshan, and it will be on the recording. Am I pinned? Is there a way to, my view is I want to make sure people are seeing mainly me, make sure people, in other words, are able to hear and see me and see my slides. For some reason, it's not showing, it's showing more of you than me, and that's okay. But I want to make sure make sure you're using your settings. And once I share screen, I will go a little bit screen blind, Gulshan, so I may ask for some assistance if you may. So I've been invited to talk with you all and to listen with you around the topic of how to teach like an entrepreneur. And this is a great title, and you all are in the business of teaching about business and researching business. So I appreciate bringing teaching into your space and drawing the parallel between when we are instructing, we are in fact building a bit of an organization and building a bit of an enterprise and building and really building a system that people will benefit from and capitalize on long after they leave your presence and when we're instructing, long after the class ends. And so, in many ways, the parallel between entrepreneurship and in teaching makes sense to me, and it's not one that I had thought of. So, I had a good time thinking about this metaphor and bringing what I do know and understand about educational excellence, both for myself and for you. Have I did my internet just glitch? Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to try this. I told Goshan before the session started. I said I was going to try this. I said I was not going to try this, but I'm going to try it anyway because I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to see if you all can hear and then potentially name this song. Okay, so we're going to try it. Hopefully Zoom and all the functions and all the sharing and the sound works as we intended. But I want to know if you know this. Now, if you get to see the song, then you'll be able to name it, and then the game is not very much fun. But let's see if I figured out how to share just sound on this particular webinar. You'll tell me by giving me a thumbs up if you can hear music. Hold on. Outstanding. I see we have some fans out there. The name of the song is showing up in your chat. And it's also a message to us as instructors, and it is to calm down. Calm down. Teaching, like any other enterprise, requires focus and calm. And the goal in instruction and teaching excellence is not to go in thinking you've got to get it all right because it is an impossible endeavor. Why? Because instruction involves people. Students are people and we are people. So I play this song to ground our conversation, to calm down, and to remember that the effort, day in, day out, semester in, semester out, session in, class out, bring a calm sense of focus and purpose that you're going to try. And the trying is the succeeding in many ways. So with that, they name that song. And now let's go into a little bit of a traditional welcome. Give me a moment to please share my screen. Okay, this is where I go a little bit screen blind. I want to make sure. So I can no longer see anybody, which is a little bit strange. So Goshan, you'll be my eyes and I will
Sure.
speak. Can't see the chat. So if there's something that comes up in the chat and I want to comment on it, I certainly will. And then when we're going to reflect together, I will stop sharing screen so I can see you along with hearing you. So teach like an entrepreneur. Again, I'm Dr. Laura Dorsey Elson, and I direct Morgan's Center for Innovative Instruction and Scholarship. And I love playing Calm Down. It calmed me down a little bit. It's a pleasure to be with you. For the next, I would say 40 minutes or so, we're going to talk about instruction to the best of our ability. I'm going to share some ideas, and we'll see if in the end there is something significant you can take away. I am about to drop in the chat a Microsoft Word doc. This should be available now to everyone to download. It's a note catcher. It's if you are so inclined to download the Microsoft Word doc, I just uploaded into the chat. It is a chance for you to structure and organize some of your thinking. If you are a seasoned instructor and professor or new to teaching, something in here may spark an idea, a thought, connect some dots. I've been instructing for 30 years. I absolutely love being on in sessions like this when someone else is talking about their instructional experience or teaching ideas because it sparks a thought. So please feel free to use this handout. And what I would ask is I will upload it one or two more times as the webinar continues and a couple more people drop in because I know when you arrive, you can't see what was in the chat. And if you just arrived and you don't know, welcome, hello, welcome. So the obvious question I always like to answer pretty early on when I'm speaking with groups is the why question. And I know I have years of experience. My original discipline before doing faculty development work around teaching and learning, my original discipline, my PhD is in human communication. And I have taught many, many, many classes early on in my career to the traditional public speaking course. So when you're talking with people, I always would tell my students at the gate, the most important question when someone is given an opportunity to address an audience, the question on people's minds is why them and why should I listen? So I like to answer that, make my pitch. An invitation is nice, but you don't know me. And I'd like to say, here's enough of a why that I hope captures and earns enough of your attention, that is. So I put a few things up on the screen to give you an idea of who I am, beyond the bio, beyond the things that Gulshan so graciously said about me. First of all, I'm a university professor like many of you, probably most of you, maybe all of you. And I've been working at Morgan State I'm going into my 25th year. And instruction is a passion, a love of mine. So that's a big part of my why. Any chance I can get to gather with other people to talk about teaching, it really does make my day. I get as much as I attempt to give. So 25 years at Morgan State, and then prior to that, I also taught straight through graduate school. So I have been working in classrooms across generations now. That's shocking to share. I shared previously that my original discipline is communication, and it has lent itself greatly in really wonderful ways to working now with faculty in terms of how can they both instruct, but also communicate their instructional techniques in a way that lands. It's been a really nice pairing between, if you look at the bottoms, where that teaching and learning block picture, the pairing that with my communication background has made faculty development so much richer for me. And now my discipline is faculty development. Science of teaching and learning is the area of scholarship that I'm exploring now. So I hope that's enough of a couple of whys and why I may have been asked to speak today, and why when I'm sharing things with you today, they come from a lot of experience, thought, and really trial and error before I got into faculty development and began to tie some of the things that I used to do intuitively as an instructor. And you might hear some things today that you're like, I didn't know that there was a body of theory behind. Oh my goodness. It's just what I know works when I'm working with today's learners, especially. So that's a little bit of my why and why I think I'm here and why it means a lot to be here. A way to clarify my why and maybe to connect to your why. So you signed up to be here. You saw an advertisement. I'm sure something got pushed out by EAM. Gulshan is great, and you know she's going to do something really cool. So you want to, but you have a why too. And I would like to think that this picture may capture a little bit of a why Teach Like an Entrepreneur would attract you to this particular session. So focus in on this cartoon and notice its context. It's a classroom. There's both an instructor in the front of the room, and then take your eyes to, there's some learners sitting down. Pay attention to their stance. So you've got somebody in the front row who's leaning a little bit. Maybe they're attentive, maybe they're not awake. You've got somebody in the back of the row also leaning, and you've got both a learner, dead center of the crowd in the classroom, the learners, and the instructor thinking the same thing. There must be a better way. If I could see hands, I would love to see them, but I cannot see you, but I'm sure maybe you can co-sign in the chat. Has anybody had a moment like this, either as a learner or, more importantly, for why you're here as an instructor, where you find yourself in the middle of a stuckness in the classroom? You've prepared, you've come in, you were ready, and then something happens, a dynamic occurs. And how do you get out of it? If you've not been in, yes, as both, thank you so much. So if not as a professor, only as a learner, we know what it's like to be in a class like, I'm so interested in this content. I was so excited about this class. And for whatever reason, I'm not feeling that excitement, which actually would connect to my desire to learn and engage in this particular moment. And oh, I wish it were something would change. So the idea of teaching like an entrepreneur capitalizes on, or connects to, I want to say capitalizes on, this notion that maybe there is a better way. And indeed there is. There are a whole myriad of ways to move out of this moment. And let me normalize this moment. Instructional excellence is not mitigating and getting rid of. There will never be moments like this because I am the most amazing teacher and professor and I captivate a room and no, that is not the goal. The goal for instructional excellence is to identify when these moments arise, to master the techniques that can allow you to see it, feel it, and not run away from it, and to structure courses and classes in such a way where they are minimal, to create and foster relationships with your students where when it comes up, instead of thinking it, maybe you kind of say it respectfully. Of course, that didn't work or something. Let's huddle up. Let's figure out, because the goal for today's class is this and we're over here. And it's to build that relationship with your students where you navigate it together. That's instructional excellence. And to normalize that sometimes there are moments like this. And what in your toolkit of instructional techniques, what in your sales kit of entrepreneurial techniques can you use together to move out of it, to mitigate these moments, and to move into a more energized and engaged learning environment? So I have decided in preparing for this that teaching, like entrepreneurship, is a process. It's a process. There really is never a final destination in teaching. It is a process that goes round and round. It requires learners and instructors engaging in active activities, the process of imparting, and then the learner metabolizing and retaining the information. It is a process. But similar to entrepreneurship, it requires agility and intentional choices, allowing us to meet each moment in our courses, in our semesters. It is similar in that way. So much like this GIF on the side, all of these considerations from an entrepreneurial standpoint, there are as many when we think about instruction and the ways in which instructional excellence requires us to attend to both what we say, how we say it, when we say it, how we invite learners to say things, do things. There are many, many choices. And it is just a bit of a puzzle, moment to moment, session to session. So it is quite similar in that way. So again, using your note takers, if you haven't, if you arrived a little bit late, I'm going to drop the or note catcher that I offer. So that is now in the chat. If you are so inclined and you want to track your thinking during this session, please feel free to open up what I just dropped it for those who arrived a little later. This note catcher, if those of you have it open. Here's where we're headed today. We're going to ground, we're going to do something. We're going to ground our session a little bit more by doing something. The Name That Tune was an opener. We're going to do something else. And then I'm going to clarify a little bit about, we're going to talk a little bit about why active learning matters. Then a good chunk of what I'd like to offer are tried and true, theory tested. I've done them myself, and I bet you some of you have done these things too. What are some engaging teaching strategies that, in my mind, connecting to the metaphor, teach like an entrepreneur, that sell? And when I say sell, I mean that invite learners in a way that is persuasive and engaging, right? Then hopefully over the course of this session, you will set some short-term goals for yourself, catch them in that note catcher or however it is that you are tracking your thinking for this session. About maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll think about that. And then we will pause for reflection as time allows. All right. So, like I said, we're going to start. Let's do something. All right. Let's do something. So, if you have a spare piece of paper, or if you want to open up a blank screen, or if you want to write, or if you want to type, if you want to pull your phone and open up your note page, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes, and given time, I may reduce it to 2. But I would like to see if you can focus for about 2 to 3 minutes on this question. I'd like you to create as long a list as possible of the many ways you know or have discovered or experienced the many ways that we can learn, because we are all learners at some point. And I just want you to write down your own list starting now. Okay, you're still working on your list. I'm going to pause the timer at 1 minute, giving you full 2 minutes. So no AIing. There's many ways that we learn things. Okay, pausing. So I see a couple of you decided to write out in the chat, but I'm actually going to ask a couple of colleagues to unmute and share a couple of ways. You can drop in the chat if you want to, but does anybody want to unmute? And Gulshan, maybe you can see a hand up since I can't. Anybody want to share like 2 or 3 ways you noted?
Feel free to raise your hand if you want to share, or just unmute and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rima.
Rima.
Yes, nice to be here. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. So, I just started teaching as an assistant professor, and I think I'm learning that through case studies and discussions that help us brainstorm about concepts we are learning, so that
Mhm.
everyone kind of, before giving them the detailed concept definition, asking them what they think about it. And somehow, actually, it's interesting that they are able to guess. And some students, of course, know what the concept is about. And
Mm.
then asking them for examples or real life situations that they have found themselves in, I think is quite a nice way to learn.
Yeah,
Instead of memorizing.
that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I see also to join you, there's some similar comments about what you are discovering in your own classes also in the chat. I also see Goshan has been to a couple of the workshops and knows a little bit about learning science. Goshan, absolutely, you're right. You're right. You're right about all the ways. And some of you are hitting about some of those instructional techniques, which is very, very helpful to think about when we think about all the ways we learn certain activities. Let me just please share with you, not an exhaustive list, one that I think we could add to just to move us along. We could add to it more and more. And you'll notice, I forgot to say, you'll notice that absent from my talk today is any reference to artificial intelligence. The rationale there is artificial intelligence in teaching and learning, as I approach it, can do a lot of what we have always done in instruction. And so think about, well, how could you can think about throughout this session, how might artificial intelligence help me create that or think about that? However, the techniques are solid that I want to share with you. And artificial intelligence can help you maybe create them quicker or think about doing it in a different way using another tool like artificial AI around instruction. But take a look at this list. A little bit, sorry about the focus error. But we learned in all these ways, do we not? Hone in and start to read. And perhaps there's some that you didn't think about. And thank you for participating as well in the chat. Some of my favorites are, we definitely learned by first on the list, trial and error. And we certainly learn by imagining and visualizing. We absolutely learn by watching other people, but sometimes in our solitude, we can learn by reflection. And so this is meant to underscore that learning is vast. And it is certainly more, there are many more ways to foster and learning in our classrooms. There are many more ways in addition to, not other than, lecturing or talking. And this is kind of the point of this particular webinar, I think, in this talk. Most of us, when we came out of our graduate school training, experienced, said most of us, I'm sure some of you, not me, I had teachers that did all kinds of, that's wonderful. Depending on your generation, you're probably getting exposed to more and more active, engaging learning strategies because they're becoming more and more pursued by younger and younger generations. But still, the thread of traditionally, we come out of graduate school and then place it into a classroom without much exposure, if any at all, to how do you instruct, how do you teach. And so our only example and thought about instruction is, well, I stand up, I'm the expert, and I talk. And then I give a test, sometimes in the middle of the session and then at the end. And I definitely have to assign a paper. I've got to do that because I had a ton of papers when I was a student. And that's kind of how we piece it together. Not thinking that there are so many other ways we have learned in our lives and our learners are open to learning. And so hopefully by the end of this seminar and webinar, you will begin to think about, I know my content. How do I offer it? And how, most importantly, do I get my learners to think and learn about this content, not just by listening to me, but by there are myriad of ways that we can invite them to work with the material that actually allows for lasting long-term memory application and building their own expertise. So we were going to pause and reflect, but I'm going to move this past this and we'll take a pause and reflect, building upon that, doing something and reflecting on it, but bring your reflections into thinking about active learning. So a lot of us may have heard this term, think we can define this term. I'm going to offer what I think is a pretty strong definition, and it comes from Michael Prince, and it's a fairly old definition, but I think it succinctly states, actively learning happens in our classrooms when students perform meaningful learning activities. That's one part of active learning. And they are offered opportunities to think about what they're doing. So just doing something without being given an opportunity to reflect and apply and think about it, if you don't have those two ingredients, you don't have active learning. And so playing a game without connecting it to content, or doing role plays fun without tying it into course material and then giving learners a chance to make those connections, you need both pieces. So keep that in mind when you think about that. Those are the two ingredients. Connect the definition of active learning around engagement and think about a very, very well-known model. Some of you may know it out there, and you can certainly say so in the chat. I wish I could see you, and I cannot, but perhaps you're like, I know that. But if you don't, it's something useful to know about as an instructor pursuing excellence in your classrooms. And that is Bloom's taxonomy. So if I wish I could do a poll just by thumbs up, and maybe you can see it, Goshan. I hope there is some awareness about Bloom's, but if not, welcome to the Bloom's Club. It is going to change and revolutionize how you think about what you're doing in your classrooms. Because Bloom's taxonomy, which has been around for quite some time, it dates back to the 60s, it was revamped in the 70s to be more of a wedge. It started off as a pyramid. I like the wedge version. It comes from metacognitive science, where we think about how we think. And all of us learn at these levels, and so do our students. We absolutely, if you look at the bottom of this wedge, we absolutely learn by remembering things. Then we also learn by understanding. But there's this other, and it's the larger part of the Bloom's taxonomy. We understand things most, not by just memorizing things. You see how it's a little smaller? But when we get to apply concepts, and when we get to go to the top of the mountain, create and critically examine and analyze and take apart and put things back together, all in the name of learning and understanding, that's when we're cooking with gas. So keep in mind that when we're engaging students and learners actively, our goal as instructors of excellence is to engage them at all these levels. And of course, depending on if the course is an introductory course to an advanced course, we will probably spend a little more time in our introductory courses in that remembering and understanding space, because material is new and they're novices. But even novices at the start of the semester have more knowledge by the middle and end is our goal, where we can begin to create and apply and do that analyzing function of learning, all in the same class. So don't think that, oh, it's a 100 level course, I've got to just download everything I know about this. They just have to bear with me while I tell them everything I know. Learning's not taking place in the way that you probably aim. Learning takes place by letting our students do something with the material and focusing in on evaluating it as well. Just as an infographic to share, it's a busy picture, but take your eyes to the larger lettering. Here are some active learning strategies that you may want to make note of on your note catcher, or however you may be capturing some ideas from here. These are tried and true ways to engage learners on that reflection part. Remember active learning? They do something and then they get a reflection. What did I just do and how does it connect to the course material? Meaningful activities is what active learning, that's the type of active learning we seek. So I'm sure the slides will get shared and you can screenshot this, but you may want to look more into, for example, look at how do I foster and generate reflection questions at the end of about a third of the way in. I've been talking for 10 minutes. Now I'm going to ask my students to talk. One of my mottos as an instructor for many, many years is this: you can have this for free. I always remind myself that whoever in my classrooms is doing the talking is doing the learning. If I'm talking for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour and a half, I'm learning, I'm thinking, I'm reflecting, I'm remembering something, but my learners have been put only into a passive space. So whoever's doing the talking, and I can extend that, and the doing, they're doing the learning. One more infographic that I want to share with you before I pause and hear some thoughts out there is there's a continuum of active learning strategies that are available to us as professors and as teachers. If you look at the lower left end of this continuum, some of the more simple, and I would use language, maybe not simple, but easy to implement, doesn't take a lot of prep. We can simply, if you look at that part of the continuum, lower left, if we pause for reflection in courses, it's actually an active learning strategy. If we do a fun self-assessment, maybe you use things like Poll Everywhere or Menti, or you are teaching remotely and you do a little Zoom poll, or that these are ways to just do just a quick activity to foster reflection. And as you move up into the more complex that requires some prep and design, maybe some prep for students, like next class session, we're going to be doing this. But these are all active learning strategies available for you. And there's a lot of resources already existing that can help you. Like, how do I do that? There's a lot of places to go to these days that will help you. Two that I recommend if you're interested in instructional excellence, free resources out there. I'm going to put them in the chat. One is called Instructional Moves. I share this with the faculty here at Morgan State all the time. It's offered by Harvard University School of Education. Some of you are probably opening a window right now, Instructional Moves, and you will see it is a ready to go-to resource on the how to do a lot of these techniques and more. And the other resource right now is totally flying out of my mind, but I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it. I do want to move this on. So I'm going to stop sharing. No, I'm not. I'm going to stay on the screen. I'm going to hit the 3-minute timer. And I would like to see if any, thank you, Goshan. And the other resource is the Patricia Cross Academy. Patricia Cross. If you can find that link, LaShawn, and share it, that is also very helpful go-to place to support. But I'd love to hear what you're thinking about. So we did something, we reflected on all the ways we learn, and we couldn't possibly finish that list. And I've talked about active learning. So what are you thinking about out there? Not necessarily time to discuss, but please, does anybody want to unmute and say what they're thinking about or pondering about?
Sure, I can
Hi.
unmute and just say something. Thank you, Professor Laura. This is really insightful. I am a second year PhD student. I'll be teaching in the fall this year, so I'm just really here to kind of learn strategies to drive active learning, and this is helpful. So just to respond to your prompt quickly, I'm thinking about that quote that you shared. The person who is doing the talking is actually doing the learning. For me, I think that's such a great takeaway. So if I talk and yap my way for 60 minutes, the students are not learning. So I need to think about how to make the students also talk to me, which is why
Right.
having the pause and reflect, even for us to talk. So, and the second thing is this, not a pyramid, but the active learning curve. So from simplicity to complexity. So this is such a great thing for me to kind of look through and see, all right, if I want simple engagement or active learning strategy, I know where to go to. If I want to make it a bit complex, I know where to go to. So kind of that's what I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm glad, and have a great time in the classroom. There was one other voice, and then we'll move on. I
Hi,
think Tina.
it's Rima again. Yes. I think I was just wondering about engaging students, as you said, because sometimes they're not in the mood to participate. Then what techniques can you use to force them into it or
Of
excite
course,
them, motivate them?
I understand both. It does feel a little bit like force. Sometimes we have to force ourselves to walk in that room. Sometimes we gotta like, okay. So I get your point, and your timing is great. So I'm going to stop the timer. And guess what? We are at the stage where we're going to talk about teaching strategies that I say sell, but I think inspire and invite. And I want to acknowledge my colleague, Dr. Tulope Noah, who now is at Cal State University out in Long Beach, who also pitched a lot of these ideas to me earlier in my faculty development. And I recognize I've done some of these and now I know where they fit, and perhaps you will have the same experience. So let's take a look at what I call teaching strategies that sell. All right. And I want to tell you that class sessions have three major segments where you are really instructing. And people kind of, well, not, that's an interesting idea, but it's true. There's pre-class, and there's ways in which you can prep learners for what's coming. And then there's the beginning of class, the start of class. Those first minutes are really, really critical. And so here are some strategies that help foster and engage learners out the gate that may not necessarily be content rich, but prepare learners. There is a beauty in preparing for learning. And so here we go. Music. Playing music prepares minds for receiving the content of the day. So it encourages thinking, it welcomes people into the room, it creates community. And you saw today, calm down. I saw people like daring to bop with me, and perhaps it worked. We are a bit calmer together. Some of the outcomes for integrating music are all theory driven for sure. And there's a lot of literature out there, pretty seminal literature dating back 20, 25 years, where when we integrate music, all of these things happen. And that's a pretty great reward for about 60 seconds to 2 minutes as students walk in. So think about music. Think about music. Moving away from music, which is one input, giving students that roadmap of what's going to happen for that class session. We call it an agenda, but letting students know at the beginning, here's what we're going to do, and here's how it's connected to, there's that famous word, Bloom's taxonomy. Just because I showed you the Bloom's taxonomy doesn't mean you keep it to yourself. Tell students, today we're going to be focusing here. It's connected to this part of the course. It helps a lot because everybody wants to know, okay, overall, I know what the course title is, but this 150-minute or an hour and a half or once a week class session, it's helpful for a learner to place it in the larger picture. And it also fosters a lot more focus from the learner. All right. So a third way at the start of class is to do what we call activating prior knowledge. Okay. And this is where you ask students, do they know anything about the topic? In your disciplines, any discipline, there might be some prior knowledge coming out of high school, coming out of undergrad, if you're working with graduate students, and or just out of curiosity in life. It's always a great thing because it gives you a sense of who might take on some learning leadership as you go through some pretty thorny areas. It gives learners a chance to shine and say, but I know about this, and to feel that pride. And it sparks curiosity in others who, so activating prior knowledge right at the start of class is really a great engaging strategy. You can actually also do something called an anticipation guide, right? Where you give, it's a bit of a game, and this is where AI might help you design. And you could load up, here's my content, create an anticipation guide, where AI could help you. But if you focus on what an anticipation guide looks like, it allows you to tease students around key areas that you want them to master for the class. See if they agree or disagree. So here is a true false question, agree, disagree. And it helps also diagnose what they know, but towards the end, they are going to learn and maybe change their answers. You might even collect those anticipation guides because it can give you some feedback, but it's a really great start of class thing to start with that frames around the content. And then finally, still start a class, that first 5 to 10 minutes, a KWL chart. This is a lot of K through 12 techniques that work in higher ed with burgeoning adult learners and adult learners, right? And just ask students, take 5 minutes and tell me what you already know, K, what you want to know, W, and then what you hope to learn, just to prime their brains. And then you're ready to get into class. So those are start a class engaging strategies. Then moving into the meat of the class, during the class, right? So you prime them, the class has started, people are ready. Here are some strategies to try. Don't forget that note catcher I shared with you. You might see some things that you currently do or want to try, but this is like now you're inside the class. Believe it or not, graphic organizers really, really help. And they allow you to help students look at that why argument. Chunk, which means separate and connect key concepts in a way that helps them retain it, not just listen to you. Also, well, we have a lot of learners these days who aren't great note takers because they have grown up digitally. So they may be able to watch something and they may be able to think about it, but that step around note taking may be a gap. And so graphic organizers that you can easily print and hand out and say, we're all going to work from the same page here, can help during class and also engage them. Here's a number of different types of graphic organizers that you can research, create blank ones, hand them out. Depending on the content area, if it's historical, you might want to do a timeline organizer. If it's a conceptual, you might want to do what's called a mind map or concept map. So you can look into these and see, maybe I'll bring this in for this particular hard aspect of this particular course, because graphic organizers help learners chunk and connect information. Then there's grouping techniques, right? This is about the doing part for learners. The more we put them together into interacting with each other around material, the better when the time is right, because it allows them to synthesize information, right? It allows them to talk with peers and remove you as the authority figure in the room, the expert, and give them a chance to build their expertise. And there's are tons of ways. Not many of us divide students like very quickly, but even grouping students can be an engaging activity that doesn't take a ton of time. So it doesn't need to be like, all right, just talk to the person next to you. Let's just get it over with. Here are a couple of ways to even group students that can be fun. We can walk in the room with a couple of different things that divide them up without them even knowing it. They walk in the room and they get a small piece, a puzzle piece. They walk in the room and they get a piece of color. They walk in the room and they get a handout with a dot on the top of the page. And then when you're ready to group them, you just say, okay, all the reds go to this part of the room, all the blues. And if you're online doing a remote Zoom class, breakout rooms. If you have, there is a way to do this in all the modalities. So keep this in mind. Then there's so many ways to group students. You can give them a colored piece of paper. You can give them a particular number on a card. If there's an acronym you want them to leave the room understanding for that class session, they each get that part of the acronym and then they break off to talk about it. You can give them a playing card and go all the parts and it becomes an anticipation activity as well. What group? When are we grouping? And even for our learners who hate grouping, it can still foster some fun and anticipation of what new group will I be with today. You can give them a color pen. You can give them a picture. You can, if you've got kids, you can get them the night before to help cut things out to help you foster an exciting grouping technique. All right. Another technique. So we talked about grouping techniques and how to divide them. Here's another during class. Talk and jot. And this is simply where you have learners. This is where the quick turn, and we call it a pair and share. They're just simply talking with the partner and taking notes and filling in. If you use the what do I know, want to know, and what do I want to learn, the KWL chart at the beginning of class, you can use that further into class because like was highlighted in ours for talking is a key learning. And I referenced that you can come back same know, want to know, learn chart. All right, rounding the bend. Timers help, and they help chunk and focus engagers. So including timers, if you have slides, just dropping a timer into your slide, which is very easy, Google it. It's very easy to drop a timer, and you've been seeing them throughout the session, and it provides structure and boundaries for thinking and then a break. And it helps pace discussions so that students and learners know when they begin and when they end, and they try to maximize that time. So it's super helpful. Here's a fun one, and I do have the link for this one. They're called response cards, and this works well in classrooms, large lecture halls. There are electronic versions, but they allow for voting, or they gamify. When you throw a question out, instead of leaning on that one student who's comfortable saying something, and by the way, those students really get worked too hard because they're a type of student that help gratify us. Like, oh my God, somebody spoke, I asked a question. But we want to equalize and have equity on who gets to share their thoughts. Not everybody wants to speak out loud. So response cards are a helpful way to get those more reluctant. There's the forcing metaphor, but more reluctant. And some of that is driven by personality, Elaine. They just aren't comfortable. They think it really loud, but saying it is a hurdle for them. So response cards allow learners to still engage without having to speak out. So you can turn a question into a multiple choice and say throughout the class, okay, if you have the red card, if you think that the red answer is right, and then it allows you also to assess, we call it formative assessment, real time. Okay, a lot of people got that wrong. Let me roll back the tape and we're going to review this material, or all right, they've got it, so you can move on. Here's a really great response card app that I love. You can ask students, and it's available both in Apple and in Google Play Store. But I've put both links. Oh God, I hope both links are in the chat. Did I get both links? Yeah, I think both Apple and Google Play Store. You can have students at the beginning of your class session download the app. Have it for the whole semester because they're going to know, okay, in Professor So-and-so's class, we do those response cards. And again, it's a gamification to engage learners around material. It's super helpful when the material is challenging and you can chunk it into small bites. Allow for an engaging way to master the material, and that gaming it will move it into long-term memory. The repetition and the chunking, according to learning science, helps. And here's a little secret. You might have fun too. It is okay as instructors to have fun too. So think about multiple choice response cards during class sessions. Finally, barcodes. We see them now everywhere. Super helpful. This QR code, by the way, doesn't go anywhere. So if some of you are using your phone to grab this, don't go to wherever it may take you. I have no idea. It's more of an image here. But it is also a way to get to create movement in your classrooms. I like to print QR codes and paste them up around a room. So learners have to get up out of their seat to go and learn something that the code takes them to. Just the standing, walking, and coming back is a powerful retrieval practice technique that allows students to associate a movement to information. A reflective moment to walk back to their chair is gold. It's just gold during classes. All right. And then finally, after class ends, or as class is ending, there are a couple of things to do the last minute of class. You can do a question right after class, but these are some techniques. Do a summary or what they call a wrap-up message. You can, for yourself, at the end of class, write a few things called a teaching log that prompt you to remember where you're headed next class session. Across whole sessions, mid-semester reflections, not waiting until the end to find out how are things going in this class from your students. And there's all kinds of free to use forms on how do I gather midterm reflections from my students. At the end of class, you can put something right by the door as they leave the room and just write something that you think you've got and things that you hope will improve on, plus some Delta conversations they're called. And there's more. Okay, taking a deep breath, checking time, Gulshan, how are we doing?
It's 12 o'clock.
Right, and we're concluding when?
We have until 12:30, so we have 30 more minutes. Yeah.
Perfect. So that leaves actually some time to do an even longer reflection. So if it works for people, I would like to stop sharing so I can finally see you, because that is all the content. That was a lot, right? So hopefully you took a little bit of notes. But what I'd like to do is to see if we could, Gulshan, is to move people into a breakout room for them to talk for just
Sure.
about maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Yes.
Yeah, Laura, we have two questions in the chat box. Can we respond to them before we go to the chat and to the yeah.
Sure, I will. Thank you for drawing my attention to it. Okay, so the first question is, would there be any differences if the students are undergraduate versus graduate? Very good question. So when we move to the key difference between traditional, your 18 to 22-year-old undergraduate students and your traditional graduate students is that we move more from pedagogy to andragogy, adult learner strategies. We focus those more on our graduate student populations, which really all that means. So the differences maybe we're not giving them an anticipation chart, but we are absolutely activating their prior knowledge, because our graduate student learners and our graduate school learners have probably had a lot of experience that they can connect to and bring to the material. So the technique doesn't differ, but perhaps the types of questions and the presentation of the question may. Now, for our undergraduate learners, we too can alter some of the techniques, because a lot of this comes from learning science that for some it may present like, well, this looks like something that someone younger might do, but actually the learning science stretches across into higher ed. And so I like to think that the techniques, and I not just like to think, I have experience with, I have worked with doctoral students who absolutely love a good response card in a classroom, particularly when it's a Thursday night and we've been in that room for 2.5 hours, and I think I'm pretty interesting to listen to. But by about 9 o'clock, when classes can end sometimes for our adult learners who are coming after work, the brain science and neuropsychology tells me that when they're moving and playing, particularly when they're tired, it works. So that is my response to that question. And I do not see the second question.
There was another question about whether there's a specific app or website you use for timer that you're using. I think they really liked yours, so they want to see where you get that from.
Because because it's you. No, I'm kidding. Yes, it's a timer that I grabbed from YouTube, and I'm going to, and there are a lot of different versions of timers on YouTube. And I work primarily in Google Slides, but if you're in Canva, you can insert timers as well. If you're in Keynote, whatever your platform you're using. So let me see if I can drop this because my YouTube where I'm sitting should know what I like and bring it up pretty quickly. And I'll drop the link to the type of timer that I just used. Look, there it is. And I'll drop the link to the timer for 3 minutes that I've been using throughout the session. It is now, actually, a better place to do it would be in response to the question. So to Sharonda, to your question, and then everybody else can benefit. The timer I use, the link to it in YouTube is right there in the chat. Okay. But my suggestion, just a little bit of a tip. If you decide to use timers in your classes, which I highly recommend, choose timers that don't have a horrific alarm at the end. Because the timer can be counting, and then there are these alarms that people who aren't remembering that human beings don't like jarring sounds, not most of us. And then the sound sometimes creates an atmosphere of panic in the classroom, and you don't want that. Okay. So, I'm going to make a joke here, and it'll be on recording. The minute I mentioned breakout rooms, 11 people left the call.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
that is a tried and true measure for what we face in our classrooms. That heavy sigh, oh my God, I've got to engage, I've got to talk. It is challenging. So unfortunately, those colleagues left. They got what they needed. But in our classrooms, another pro tip that I think is important is to acknowledge and make normal that moving into talking with people can be daunting and feel like, okay, I've got to get ready. And Zoom allows people to get out. When you're in a classroom, just like I played Calm Down, just getting people ready. And then supporting them through the conversation, providing questions that they can take in so they have to think of anything, giving that timer. Oh, I see a hand. Maybe we won't ever get to breakouts because now we're at 24, and that's really great. Go ahead, Rima.
Hi. So, actually, I was wondering when you said students try to avoid group work. Where I've started teaching, it's actually the opposite. That we have been told they love group assignments. They just love working in groups. I still haven't given them a group assignment, so yet have to see what's the reason behind it. But it may, yeah. So I actually don't know the reasons, but my guess is it's because the society is based on collectivism. So perhaps they like working together,
Right.
or it could also be that they help each other. So it's kind of different.
Yeah, it's probably indicative of the organizational culture of the institution. And if they are accustomed to and have success stories, because fostering pleasure and group learning, it's all about how group work is structured, graded, introduced, how you build in points for recalibration. And those are things that faculty can learn. So it's great to hear you're at an institution. And it's not wholly unusual, but it is absolutely wonderful to hear that you are where you are. For those of us who are in spaces, Morgan is one of them where there's like this I hate group work environment. We too have an opportunity to normalize that experience and then foster an openness to could it be, remember that cartoon? Could there be another way? And yes, there is. And those two resources I dropped at mid call to the instructional news and the K. Patricia Cross Academy, there are some actual strategies driven by learning science that could help you if you're trying to generate, if you're at an institution, unlike Remo, where you can get, it's hard to get people to enjoy group work or lean into it knowing they can be there, they are part of the solution. Some of those resources may help you. Okay. Are there any other questions? I see one in the chat.
I'm sorry,
Ooh,
there's a couple of them.
yeah, yeah. Okay, y'all, let's hit them. Okay, reshare the document. Resharing the document I just shared, that's an easy one. To Mohammed, it is a note catcher. I will grab it very quickly for you, and I will move on to the next question.
And just, I just also like to make a note that I will share the recording of this session as well as all the resources that was shared in an email to everybody who registered for the session.
Okay. All right, thank you. So moving on, I'll read the question aloud as well for my own. This is a learning science strategy. Reading something out loud helps me retain it. So should we as instructors group the students, or students should be given the autonomy? How do we identify social loafing in groups? Okay. Coming from my experience and my understanding about grouping and things that I have used and seen and know to work, all of the above works. This is why instruction, remember I said at the beginning, it is a process, and it is about agility and intentional choices that meet a given moment and meet a given class. And I certainly have experience with class as a whole where they need more from me as an instructor to get them going. And then I have on the other end of the spectrum. So that is one. This is where it's very important to come to know your classes as best you can, not to pigeonhole any one student as you're that student, you're that student, but in general, what collectively, is this a class that requires a little more prodding? Is this a class where I need to step back a little more? Is this a class where I want to flip? I may need to step back too much, and I can't even get my expertise out. And so I think it's important to come to know your learners and the culture of the classroom in that way. However, when to use letting students group themselves and when not can also be driven by what's the goal of the activity. So if the grouping is for fun, it's an icebreaker, then it's probably good to just get them divided up quickly, to not let them, because when we give students the autonomy, it can take a little longer because they're not as accustomed to having to lead in the classroom. So the activity and what its purpose is may drive, do I do it with my unique way? And those grouping techniques those examples are ways I can do it, or do I give it to them? And if you give it to them, another question that you should consider is, and if I give them grouping capacity, because I'm coming to the social loafing part, if I give them grouping capacity, what boundaries can I still put on how they do it that may prevent social loafing? So it could be you have 10 seconds to divide up. And I've seen rooms of 300 do this, right? I've seen if we put a boundary on how they do it, we're still managing that. And then you can and then you could also say, and to divide up, make sure that there's only 2 people that you have talked with before in your group. Therefore, putting a boundary on, I've got to mix things up a little bit more because I've talked with those 2 people. And that may keep from social loafers to all come into one group. Make sense? So this is my thoughts for now. Something else may bubble up. And these kinds of questions are great to talk with other colleagues about. Here at Morgan State University, and Gulshan I hope will co-sign, we are really striving more and more in these past few years to foster a reflective teaching community where we talk about how we teach more with each other. In the early days of my career, what happened in my class, and I don't want anybody to know. And even today, it's hard to let people in. Like when we get observed, it feels like, we're lining up for judgment. But really, the more we share about our instruction with other people instructing, it really becomes a nice symbiosis of, in me telling you about my experience, you're going to tell me about yours, and I'm going to think about other parts. But it's so iterative and wonderful. Yes, sometimes it's nerve-wracking when it's linked to big ticket items when it's evaluation, but I'm talking about reflective conversations, developmental observations from peers. And we're trying to do more of that here at Morgan State. All right, moving on to, do I have any good specific entrepreneurship ideas? It's not my discipline, but if you gave me 5 minutes, I bet you if and maybe goes on, you can step in, or better yet, some people on the call where your discipline is in business and business education, maybe you have something you can share. But I like to think that just about any set of content can be worked into a cool activity. So I will tell you that I'm a big fan of role playing. I find that role playing ticks a number of boxes off. One, it allows learners to, and by the way, and I let learners drive the topics in role plays, where I say, give me an experience in your life. Tell me about a experience in a business that was great, wasn't great. It can be something you saw, it can be something you experienced. I allow them to do the topics. They have buy-in. So when we get to role plays, it doesn't come out of Dr. Dorsey Elson's head. I'm like, these are peer created. And I used worksheets to drive structuring role play. So similar to that, how do you break them up and not allow social loafers to kind of take over? I can give students control, but they have to do it in the boundaries I set. And the boundaries I set are typically allow me to get the information I need so we're not totally off chart. So I think the same could be said. And look, Gulshan just dropped a couple of links related specifically to entrepreneurship as a discipline, and thank you. Oh, that's great. And you're getting some cosigns from Miranda. That's great. All right. Are there any other questions out there?
I see there is maybe two more questions there. Yeah, I see two more. One from Moshkan asking, could you please confirm whether these techniques are applicable to a fully flipped learning methodology classroom? What are the important factors to consider?
Okay, so just so I am stating my understanding about when you say fully flipped, we're talking about flipping a classroom. And the flipped classroom methodology, for those who don't know, and even if it's one, it's worth stating, as I understand it and as I have implemented, is where asynchronously or between class sessions, students are working with content. And this will typically nowadays be through the learning management platforms that we use, your Canvases, your Blackboards, your DL2s, all of this. And that content is engaged asynchronously in preparation for the other part of active learning when they're in the room with us or on remote Zoom with us, then they are actively engaging, reflecting on the content. So this is the flipped classroom. And the reason it's called flipped is because traditionally all of the downloading of content would come through lecture form. And lecture is a great instructional technique when done well. Do not leave this webinar me saying, no, don't ever lecture. But we flip it in order to get that really chunky, wonderful active learning for 40, 50 minutes rather than 15 minutes. All right. So honing in on the question, absolutely. When you think about it, the way that I structured this talk is a lot of those active learning techniques across that continuum are flipped classroom strategies when they're in the room. Right? So they're doing the content is doing bars having those strategies. In addition, when they're in that flipped, when they're in the classroom, a lot of those start, during, and ending a class techniques apply. They can apply around the activity of that day and can easily plug in. So I do not think that there is much tweaking to do when you're thinking about those major parts of a class when you can engage a learner. Okay. Any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I think that's all the questions we had in the chat box.
Okay, all right. So, I got a heart on that questioner. Thank you so much. So I'm going to, it's wonderful. So here's what I think we can do with our remaining time. And we have just enough of you to do what I just told you we're trying to do more of at Morgan State. And that is to talk with someone and to reflect. So I hope that throughout this call, you've been writing a couple things down or putting it away in memory if you've got that talent. I do not now, I cannot hold information as long as I used to. And so, what I'd really love for you to do, even if it's for 5 minutes, is I'd like you to simply, so Gulshan, if you would open up breakout room, I would like you to make sure you can keep you and I here. That should leave about 16 people. Hopefully, you don't get put in a room. So let's put 3 people in a room so in case somebody is, on screen but not like able to unmute and talk. And if you feel the tempt to leave the meeting, don't. Resist the urge.
Okay.
It'll be fine. I would take a breath. All you're going to do is you're going to go and listen to somebody tell you, here's something I'm going to try. Now that I've listened to some of this, that's it. Here's something I'm going to try.
Okay. For 5 minutes, right?
No. Let's lower the stakes for 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay.
Okay. So go and just listen and talk. Here's something I'm going to try.
All
And
right.
I'll broadcast that message into your breakup.
Okay.
All right,
Sure. Here we go.
get your hair right. It's just a chat.
Here we go.
Okay.
So
Join.
you should be able to see the room that you're assigned to, and you click on just join or something. Okay, yeah.
Good. So we have 2 people in rooms 1 and 2 already there chatting.
Yeah.
And now they are going. That's
Yeah.
terrific. Some of the Firefly note takers will just stay with us. So remember that they are here taking notes, Gulshan. And it looks like room 2 needs somebody to come and talk with them.
Yeah, room 2
So
needs.
what I would suggest is to gently move someone from 3.
Oh,
Oh,
somebody joined. 2 of them joined.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So we will just allow them to share. And then we'll bring them back and close. Okay, Goshan.
Okay. 10 more seconds.
Thank you, thank you. And we are back.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, welcome back and everything. That wasn't bad. That was as delightful as I expected it to be, right? It's nice to go and talk with people for just a moment who are in the same boat as you, doing the same things as you, or different things that you can. So, how I'm curious, based on here's the catch, and this is how we'll end. What did you hear from someone else? Not what did you share, but what did you hear that you're still like, and thinking about, or you were convinced of, or you thought was great and you want to cheer them on. Who wants to share? Diombe? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you. So one thing that I heard was actually from a student who hadn't yet done teaching. And so I asked, in that regard, what's something that you feel like you would appreciate as a student? And he shared just kind of starting off with examples, right? Before class even begins. So sort of having that baseline to create a little bit of a spark that they can connect to throughout the class. So I thought that that was really good, and I found that really beneficial for my work.
That's really great, Humbe. Thank you. You know, I talked about activating prior knowledge as a strategy, but I think you could turn what you just heard from who you spoke with into seeing today's class on an example. So if you started the class with a pretty elaborate example and you told the students, by the end of this class, all the components of this example will make sense to you, it gives them a bit of a treasure map of, oh, I'll know what that term means. I'll understand why this happens in that example. And then you can come back to that example at the end. And that's a technique that I just came up with right now based on what struck you as interesting. And that is why talking with people is really awesome. Anybody else? I'm really good at waiting. I'll rephrase the question. What did you hear that interested you that someone else is going to try or is thinking about trying? Hmm.
I think they're still thinking through that. But yeah.
Good. I'm good. Don't worry. And people, don't worry. What it says to me is what often happens. We really can hold with what we said, but it might be like, oh, I can't remember, or it might be, I don't want to say what someone else said. So I would ask you this, open up your chat box. Let's try it this way. Please open your, for those who have stayed on to the very last end of this call. And by the way, I really enjoyed my time. Would you please open up the Zoom chat box and please share one or two things that you think you might try that you've heard today? Anywhere from an active learning technique or even to look into them. You might say, I'm going to go to those websites. You might say, I'm going to focus more on how I end my classes because I never really know where students are. And let's see what we see. So I see one response. Okay, QR code interests you. Okay. I'm glad to see Bloom's taxonomy struck a chord. I highly recommend telling your students about Bloom's on day one. So they are in on understanding how their own brains work. Okay. Somebody else, what do you think you might do? I'm glad to hear group activities and hone in on even just grouping them can be a real milestone in your course and create community for not even just the activity, but getting them into groups. And I'm glad to hear that some of the resources that both myself and Goshan dropped are something that you'll go back and look at. Well, that said, I do appreciate those of you who stuck it out all the way to the end. And for those of you watching on YouTube far later in the game, hello. It's back over to you, Goshan, and give you my gratitude once again to spend a little bit of time with your colleagues and your community. And please bring us to a close.
Thank you. Thank you. This was wonderful, Laura. Thank you so much. This was very insightful. I learned a lot. I've been teaching for the past 12 years and just sitting and hearing this conversation, I was like, wow, there's so much I don't know yet. So thank you. Thank you for your insightful conversation. This was definitely great. Everybody, thank you for joining us and staying till the end. I will share the recording and all the resources that we talked about. And I hope to see you at our next Learn and Share, which is going to be on May making impact like an entrepreneur. So we're going to be talking about service in academia and how we want to look at doing service in academia in a more entrepreneurial way. That session is going to be on April 14th. So everybody, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Thank you. Thank you again, Laura. Bye.
Bye-bye.